Thank you very much, Martin. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our presentation, Driving a Greener Move to S4HANA. My name's Steve Pearce, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Lawrence Hill, who's going to be doing most of the work for you today. Now, we don't have a very big slot here today, so I'm not going to dwell on the TJC bit for very long, but just to let you know who TJC are, for 23 years now, we've helped customers to automate their data archiving processes and reduce that total cost of ownership element in their SAP environment, specifically through data volume management, and that's from automation tools, from consulting as well. There's four main areas of expertise: data archiving, that's the tools and consulting; ILM and GDPR management, helping companies remain compliant in that respect; decommission of legacy systems, so what do you do with your old ERP once the move to S4HANA is complete; and data extraction for tax and audit purposes. Now, because there's not going to be really any time for Q&A at the end of this, we'll be happy to talk to you about any of these in the virtual booth throughout the whole length of this event today. So today, Lawrence is going to talk about energy savings, specifically as a result from archiving and making ready your systems for the move to S4HANA. We'll talk specifically about savings realized by three of our most recognizable customers, and Lawrence will go through one by one and just sort of explain. Thank you very much. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, and I hope some of you remember me from last year when I was over in Norway, and I look forward to this session today under the different circumstances. Anyway, this first section is going to address some of the facts and that relating to the costs and how you can make savings by simply doing what is best practice. When you look at the typical total cost of ownership components, there are going to be two that I've made stand out here: energy consumption and data volume. They cost money, and that's where our focus can be. So when we look at those particular parts, they break down into soft and hard returns. Things like ILM, deletion, tracking your data, and extraction for tax, etc. They all have a value. They all save money, but they are really the soft options. The key areas which are going to save you money are getting the data volumes down and controlling the volumes of your database in the ECC world, and the energy consumption that is associated with that, which is not trivia, and I will now explain that using a particular client as an example. But just before we look at that client, let's look at what SAP say. What are they saying, what we can do, what they can do, etc. Well, SAP, if you go to their website, they are using the UN Global Sustainability Goals, and there's 17 of those. And if any of you have got time on your hand, please go in and read them, because it goes on an awful lot. But SAP say they can create their biggest inputs and savings to the world in the green world we're talking about and the renewable world in blocks 8, 9, 10 and 12, which is great. They know where they're sitting. And when we look at that as TJC, where we do what we do, which is the archiving, etc., we can make savings in areas 9 and 12. And to be quite honest, most of them are in that box 12. But what is this problem? What is the thing we are looking at, and why are we looking at it? The sustainability quotation. Is it a problem? Well, today, in 2020, the energy consumption of the global data centers is expected to account for about 3.5% of the world's carbon emissions. And by 2040, that is expected to grow to nearly 40%. Excuse me. That is a considerable amount. Now, that's going to come from where these big data center users, many of us are starting to move our technology onto the cloud. And there are big reasons for doing that. There are savings. But these big boys, and I've just picked out I think it's 12 of them on there. They are the businesses where you are tending to take your data delivery to. Now, that means they're going to be the consumers of the energy. But that's good. That's good news. Excuse me, I pressed the button too quickly there. That's good news. From an eco point of view, these people are going to be in the public view. They are going to have to listen to what their customers say, and they're going to be answerable to the public if they don't use renewable energy far more than a single company sitting in Norway, sitting in the UK or anywhere. You will be able to use your energy and no one's going to question where it comes from. But because these guys are going to be so big, it will help control the world. So data center energy users, there's some good news in there, even though it's being concentrated and it's growing. When we start to look at more near timeline data, currently data centers are predicted not on carbon usage, but on usage of energy, to be using 20% of the world's energy by 2025. So the two graphs are OECD and non-OECD industrial section consumption. And if you look, most of them don't reach the 20% mark. Yet IT, the data centers, and all of us are going to be more than the pharmaceutical, more than iron and steel consumption, etc. Which means there is a responsibility on us to all save as much as we can. So let's see how we can do some of that by doing nothing more than we should always do anyway. So, Carlsberg, I'm taking it that you all heard of the Carlsberg Group, the brewer based in Copenhagen. So we've been working with them for 5 years, and we've been their partner for archiving, and we have managed significant archiving for them, and we are now being contracted to handle in the next year all their GDPR side of things, which is not up for discussion today, but it's important because it overlaps with the archiving. Now, when we do our work with Carlsberg, we have a monthly KPI sheet. That KPI sheet is what you see in front of you now. And the point is, it's got a headline figure there of saving from their system, since we've been doing this, 21 terabytes. Now, that is a headline, and any of you who are particularly technical know that if you apply SAP's own compression information, that saving has a reality of 16 terabytes rather than the 21 headline. So they've got a production system which saves 16 terabytes. They've got a live DR system which saves 16 terabytes. We have a pre-production, full pre-production copy, which means there's 16 terabytes less in it. And if we take quality and development, we estimate about 7 terabytes is saved on that. So therefore, there is 55 terabytes of saved space. If we then look at the yellow bit in the graph, that says they are using on their live database 10.5 terabytes, so call it 10 terabytes. And if you remember, the full landscape is 3.5 roughly times. So that means that the current landscape energy consumption is 37 terabytes worth of data. And we've saved 55 terabytes in archiving terms, which means we have pulled back their energy save costs by 149% in comparison to what they are using now if they had not archived. That's quite a complex theory to take on board, but if you think about it, the energy you are consuming in the storage elements of your data center, that is a significant saving. So the best thing to do is now prove that by putting it into numbers. On this sheet, you can see that it goes back to 2015. It's using dollars, but we can equate a dollar to a euro for the sake of today's arguments. And the source is bigdatachallenges.com. They have done the calculation. I think they were using Seagate disks as the model they were using. And you can also see that the electromagnetic, the solid state drives are far higher in their cost of energy per gigabyte, etc. So when we take the savings as an average in the middle range, so you've got some down at 11, 14, and some up at 100 and $177. I've just picked the middle range. We are looking at the 55 terabytes is equivalent to 27k saving of euros, which on 149%, the saving in just energy is around the $40,000 or euro mark. If you then bring that up to date with world prices this year, there's about a 29% increase in energy pricing since that analysis was done. So that 40k now equates to $52,000 euros in today's money, which is starting to become a significant amount of money. When we look at energy and archiving and those type of things, for Carlsberg, if you had come to the presentation last year, you would have seen that they stated there was a greater than 2 million euro saving in the archiving that they've done. And we were working on 18 terabytes then, we're now on 21. And that removed 73 of the headline terabytes, 55 of the allowing for the compression. And we know that that energy reduction has been 52k on average. But knowing Carlsberg, who use a very highly sophisticated Hitachi data storage system, their pricing was probably up in that 100 rather than the 49 I ringed and showed you, because they use very sophisticated systems. So their actual savings is probably double that in energy alone. And it's not the energy for the disks, it's the energy for cooling it all down, the air conditioning, the environmental that you have to have at the same time. But in doing the archiving, the standard SAP objects, using them with automation from us, they have prepared that data for its long-term retention and have an absolute clear record for auditability of who did what, when. And now, as I said at the very beginning, we're bringing in the GDPR. We're using the archiving technology to support the GDPR requirements, and the ILM objects that SAP supply as part of your license are now being brought in for deletion of information that shouldn't be retained. So overall, by doing just what SAP recommend as standard practice, archiving, you save energy, you get your costs down. That means you can promote that side of things when you are talking internally as your business savings, because it's very good for your reputation to have an energy saving element, and archiving brings less risk, and I'll explain why later on in the presentation. So I tried to give a flavour there, and Steve will be in the booth afterwards where we can go into more detail if you really need us to. But we're going to go and look at two companies, Dunelm and BT, within the UK, which are getting ready for S4HANA. Dunelm, for those of you who don't know Dunelm, is a UK retailer. It's a bit like IKEA without the flat pack furniture. It does all the cushions, the bedding, and all the other home furnishings. Anyway, moving on, the value proposition from TJC, what we deliver in the very high level terms is a strategy for your archiving and your data volume management with automation so that the workload is kept manageable and the costs are kept down across all the landscape. We can support that and your SIs when they're doing their migration to help them move all the licensing over, get everything looking the same in S4 as much as you can do, and have it safely in, ready to go, which will be very important in S4, because at the moment, archiving is the primary route for getting data out of your S4 database to save your HANA costs. So, Dunelm, as I said, a UK retailer. It uses bricks and mortar. It also delivers online. And in these current times of COVID, their online has increased by about 80% over the last few months. So it's quite considerable. So let's look at what we were doing with them. So back in 2014, Dunelm were starting to look at archiving to help them manage their data volumes on the database. Their landscape was BW, ECC, and EWM. So the primary focus was ECC, and they started by doing things like IDOC, etc. They then realized that to achieve more, they would have to include more knowledge and expertise, which is where TJC came onto the scene and assisted them in identifying the right business objects, the right objects that gave them the best value for money, and the big thing about bringing in the automation so that the archiving could be run without excessive manual labor. So between 2014 and this year, we've been settling Dunelm down into containing, helping them finish off their own internal technical objects, helping them now introduce the business objects, helping talk to the business so that there was no panics there, and getting everything ready. And the archiving files are being created, and originally were being created on site in a data store on premises. During this year, we have now migrated that up onto Amazon Web Services. And that's been done for two reasons. One, it was far less cost to have the archive repository up in Amazon than it was on premises. And secondly, they could remove the energy consumption of that system in their particular data center. And it was something that moved to Amazon where they get far better pricing, etc., which is what I was explaining. And those on the big boys, they will get their energy far cheaper than you and me. So Amazon now contains their data archive repository. Now Dunelm is, I suspect, like many companies, they do not know yet officially whether they're going to S4. The IT people are working on the basis it's a natural progression, but it could be they choose to go somewhere else when senior management make that decision. And the second thing they don't know is when are they going to move. So IT cannot sit still, it has to prepare. So in doing what it's doing, it is safeguarding what it could happen. So they're working on the assumption they're going to S4. They're working on the assumption that the archive files are now up in Amazon Web Services. They will be able to be read by the S4 system. They know that the automation tools can be moved from their current on-premise environment over to their future environment. So they know if they go S4, they are absolutely safe. And they can present back to their internal management that that is what they've been doing whilst they've been waiting for a decision to happen. The second thing on the Amazon services is that not only do they have one copy of all the repository, the archive repository, they actually get within their price framework a second copy. So they now have resilience inside Amazon of all their repository. So they don't have to now back up that repository. They don't have to do that work. And there would be an instant changeover for restore if it was needed. So there have been some significant benefits from that move to Amazon. So looking at the bullet points, Dunelm were always looking to improve performance, control their volumes, secure the data for legal purposes and auditable purposes. The new archive files are now duplicated in Amazon, which means that brings an extra benefit to them. And they are all working towards the fact that they are preparing for S4, even though they don't know when that's going to happen and whether that's going to be the approved route that the board are going to take. But they made savings, and those savings, to begin with, don't look like very much. They moved 2 terabytes up into Amazon, and that saved them roughly 8,000 per year. But the one thing they are doing now is right sizing. So they have on their live system 4 years of live data. They are then going to move to 3 years. And all that requires them to do is press a button on the automation tool, and it will start that work and achieve it. And then when they get closer to the decision they know of going to S4 or somewhere else, they will then go to 2 years live. And then they hope in the final throes, just before they go to wherever they're going, be it S4 or other ones, they will go to 18 months to minimize the amount of data they migrate. So they are also right sizing. So this 8,000 they've saved this year will become 12, 18, 20, 25,000 as they do more and more data as they go along the right sizing path and the moves that they're making. So looking at the summary then very quickly, the data archiving had started in-house, but they needed more benefit of knowledge and greater expertise. We came on board and turbocharged it by identifying the right objects. The big win for the system was the automation with the TJC Archive Sessions Cockpit. And then finally, the reducing of costs and energy consumption, one by moving the files up into Amazon and removing heavy load equipment from their own on-premises system. Now, second of them, and I know I'm going quite at speed, but I'm trying to get a lot of information over quickly. BT, British Telecom, is the national telecommunications supplier, as you probably know, to the UK. This is far more complex. They are data archiving. We have implemented GDPR across their SAP landscape. They have BW. They are halfway through the stage of going to S4, so they have a HEC migration, which is the HANA Enterprise Cloud. They know when the final move to S4 is, and they have TJC supporting them throughout. We've been there since 2017. We run the operation like we do for Carlsberg, where we are online to them and part of their support systems. But going back to 2017 with BT, they had primarily SAP BW and they have ECC. Those were both in a subsidiary company called EE, which is the telecommunications, a mobile telco, a merger of TE Mobile and Orange in the UK, became EE and was bought by BT. BT themselves were using Oracle Financials. And in 2017, they went out to tender, and SAP, as you probably have seen, they are now on their route to S4 as their preferred platform. So in that 3 years, we've been archiving, pulling down the volumes of data within BW and within the ECC, and the IT team have been handling the Oracle side, which is not our forte. And now everything in this year, in the middle of the year, was migrated over to the HANA Cloud, HANA Enterprise Cloud, the HEC, as everybody knows. Now, that is the halfway house to going to S4. And, excuse me, in the HANA Cloud, you now have BW, ECC, and you have the archive files, and you have central finance running. And the plan is to then move that whole lot in 2022 to a full S4 BW4 environment. The archive files will be accessible by the S4. The ASC tools, which are on BW and on ECC, will migrate over to the new cloud environment, and there will be new tools brought in like ELSA, which I will talk about in a few moments as a separate issue. And the whole point is that that has been, as you can see, a 5-year plan to move and get themselves stabilized. So I'm just going to take a short sidestep now, and that is ELSA. ELSA is designed to decommission your old legacy system. So your old ECC needs to go, therefore it needs to have some way, you need some way of getting back to the data. And so we put this screen together because it just shows a sales order, but up the top, SAP data number 3, you are looking at, from this screen, the S4 data. In the number 4, you're looking at the ELSA repository and looking at all the data that has been extracted from the old ECC and is sitting in ELSA. And then you've got the archive file, whether that's been migrated up into the S4 environment, whether it's sitting in ELSA, whether it's been put out in the cloud somewhere on Amazon. The fact is, everything about the requested information can be brought back for one screen for people to see it. And that is the confidence you need when you are going to decommission something, that in your move to S4, you can go back to answer the questions that the taxman, the regulators, etc., appropriate to your industry can get involved in. Okay, so now a couple of slides to wrap it up. BT, data volume reduction. Most important, they had time windows of 48 hours. So they had to keep their volumes down. They needed to get those volumes down such that they could do this in the windows they had available. And not only just do it, they needed buffer time, because if it went wrong, they needed to be able to restore. They've done this with, including the GDPR, so the data integrity has been there, and everything has been done to support the reduction of HANA costs eventually in the new environment in 2022. And when I say that, and we look at the costs that are involved there, we're taking about 4 terabytes out of the system on the ECC and 6 terabytes ready for the move to the new final target system in S4. So you can start to see that if you take 10 terabytes out, you don't have to have as much HANA memory and disk ready for the new system. And that, on BT's calculation, is a saving of £1.5 million over 5 years, which is a significant saving. And once you've done it, you're there, that's your start point. And that occurs every year because you never use it. Once you never put it in, it becomes your saving for then onwards. So data archiving started to support the migration timescales originally, and it has the side productivity of being great for the regulatory world and tax world. They then had to implement GDPR over the top, which we've done in data archiving, and we can explain that offline to you. And then the NLS is being reduced, and we're going to reduce the BW into SAP IQ and NLS to get that 6 terabyte saving. And total cost of ownership, they've pulled down the volumes, they've reduced the energy consumption, and they've got everything into Windows by which they can then complete. So I hope that was a very rapid through, and I'm going to hand back to Steve for his final thoughts.
Thank you, Lawrence. That was a lot of information crammed into a few minutes there. So, what are the takeaways from all of that? Well, really, the takeaways are twofold. Total cost of ownership relating to energy savings, and that's above and alongside any savings you get from sort of data volume reduction. And the move to S4 HANA, so if you considered the savings you can realize by addressing purely data volumes. And that's either moving directly to S4 HANA or moving to the HEC before the full upgrade to S4, of course. So we decided with the presentation today to skip the Q&A because we've got the virtual booths open for the whole of this event. We've got 2 virtual booths open. I think in the chat you'll see a link to our virtual booth that's currently open. We'll have a second one open straight after this. So if any of the topics we've covered here today are of particular interest to you, or you just want a general discussion about managing data volumes, decommissioning legacy systems, either click into one of those links that we put in the chat, or go onto the SBN website, click our logo, and drop in and talk to us. Alternatively, you can drop me an email personally. The details on the screen. Just check the spelling of my surname there. It's quite unusual. And all that leaves is for me to say thank you very much for your attendance. Hopefully we'll speak to some of you over the next few days, but it's been a pleasure. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks very much. Martin?